Hi there, my name is Rob, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can avoid illness, reduce your susceptibility to bacterial and viral infections including coughs, colds, flus, and generally reverse illness by eating more raw foods compared with cooked foods. So please watch this video till the end, because by the end of this video you'll be exposed to evidence showing that raw foods prevent illness, and that eating a large portion of your diet in the form of fresh raw fruits and vegetables actually helps to prevent health problems. So a major part of this video will be detailing scientific experiments undertaken at the beginning of the century that illustrate how not eating food raw and uncooked causes health problems. Now, the scientific evidence on this topic is actually too large to talk about completely in this video. So rather than talk about every experiment that's ever been done that illustrates this, I will talk about a few of the major ones, and I'll list a whole bunch of other ones that have been done in the past that I didn't speak specifically on. Now, if I talked about all of them in this video, the video would actually be too long, so I'll just list them separately so you can read through them. So let's begin. So the most famous experiment illustrating this was done actually by Dr. Francis Pottenger. It was done over 10 years and it included over 900 cats. Francis Pottenger was a scientist who put three different groups of cats on three different diets. The first group of cats was on a 1/3 raw meat and a 2/3 raw milk diet. The second group was on a 1/3 raw meat and 2/3 pasteurized milk diet. And the third group was on a 1/3 raw meat and 2/3 cooked meat diet. Now, the group on the fully raw diet lived virtually disease-free without any health problems. Both the group on the pasteurized milk and the cooked meat diet had all kinds of health problems. Now, the raw food cats look very similar from one generation to the next, having large skulls, broad faces with broad and well-formed dental arches, adequate nasal cavities, and large and long bodies. They were free from vermin and parasites. Their membranes were firm and pink in color. And death resulted only from old age or injuries sustained in fighting. None of the cats actually died from disease. So now with the cooked food cats, they were actually smaller in build and their bones were smaller in diameter. The bones would actually sometimes grow out of proportions, with the hind legs being much longer than the forelegs. The cats were not similar in appearance, so each kitten had a different skeletal pattern. They had a lot of dental problems, so there was severe impairment of bone composition in all cases. The calcium content of their bones would fall from normal to an abnormal level. Deliveries were very, very difficult, and many cats actually died in labor. The mother a lot of times was unable to lactate. The mortality rate of the kittens was very high, so many of them were too frail to even nurse. Development of the secondary sexual characteristics was incomplete, so the degree of masculinity and femininity was lessened, and cats of both sexes tended to become more neutral in their appearance. The cats fed cooked meat were irritable and would bite their handlers. Intestinal parasites and vermin were very common. Skin lesions and allergies became worse from one generation to the next. Pneumonia was one of the most common causes of death. A great number of them actually died from diarrhea followed by pneumonia. So as you can see, the results of a raw food diet and a cooked food diet affects cats' health differently. Now, another person was Professor Lowell. So he noted when pasteurized milk was used as a partial ration, cats had problems with their skeleton, and they had a failure in their development of their teeth. They had a tendency towards development allergies, tendency towards sterility in subsequent generations. Another person named Francois Magendie had fed dogs boiled and raw bones. The dogs given boiled bones died within a couple of months, and those fed the heat processed bone extract gelatin for a few days preferred to die rather than eat more. So fresh raw bones, on the other hand, actually kept the dogs alive for long periods and appeared to afford adequate nourishment. So another person who did a similar experiment with similar results, but on guinea pigs, was O. Steiner. So Dr. Steiner actually placed a large group of guinea pigs on a diet of their normal foods, which was hay, oats, carrots, and water, which would normally be taken raw in the wild, but in this case they were cooked in a high-pressure steamer. So diseases appeared shortly after that. The teeth became so softened to such an extent that they could be actually cut away with scissors. Gangrenous gingivitis developed, and the jaws softened and warped until the rows of teeth overlapped, so they couldn't and wouldn't close normally. The salivary glands became diseased, and the animals actually developed both goiter and anemia. In certain cases, 2 teaspoons of pasteurized milk each day were added to their diet, and these guinea pigs actually developed arthritis. So Whale and Mourcant of France in 1912 fed a number of pigeons whole raw grains. The other pigeons were actually given the same kind of grain entirely whole, without any kind of refining, only this grain was thoroughly cooked. Now the pigeons given the raw grain were very active and gave every indication of being perfectly nourished. The pigeons given the cooked grains actually developed beriberi, and they all died paralyzed within 90 days. Now the amount of experiments showing the effect of cooked versus raw foods was actually done the most on rats. So Dr. Ernest Scott and Professor Lowell fed rats on raw and pasteurized milk. The rats on the raw milk diet showed a good sleek coat. They had good growth and weight, their eyes were clear, their dispositions were excellent, and they enjoyed being petted. The rats on pasteurized milk had a roughened coat, their growth was slow, their eyes lacked luster, and they were very irritable, and they showed a tendency to bite when being handled. The rats on pasteurized milk also showed a loss of vitality and weight, and many actually developed anemia. Now, heated vegetable oils are a staple of the diet in India, so Indian scientists have actually made tests to determine their value. So the Indian scientists Ragu and Rajagopalan actually heated peanut, sesame, and coconut oils in an open iron pan to a temperature of about 270 degrees Celsius. And this was actually fed to white rats. So the rats all got jaundice and all of them died within a week. The conversion of feed was very poor in all the animals, and on autopsy their livers were actually found to be badly damaged, congested, and discolored. Control animals that were given uncooked oils utilized their food really well and survived the experiment in good health. A popular Indian butter substitute called vanaspati, which is made from the heat-processed oils of fruits, flowers, and vegetables, was actually fed to rats, and third-generation rats actually became blind. In a book called Goldot, or Goldo, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Lewis E. Cook Jr. And Junko Yasui had performed experiments comparing the effects of raw food versus cooked food in rats. The experiment involved 3 groups of rats. So the first group was fed a diet of only raw foods. So they grew into completely healthy specimens and never suffered any health issues. They grew rapidly, never became fat, reproduced with vigor and enthusiasm, and produced healthy offspring. They were always playful and affectionate. They died after the equivalent of about 80 human years, and they were autopsied. All their organs, glands, and tissue appeared to be in perfect condition without any signs of aging or degeneration. Now the second group of rats was fed from birth a diet of cooked foods. These rats actually became fat, and they were afflicted by the very same diseases affecting present-day society, including colds, fevers, pneumonia, poor eyesight, cataracts, heart disease, and arthritis and cancer. Now these rats actually exhibited vicious, nervous, and self-destructive behavior, and they actually had to be separated to keep from killing each other. Their offspring were consistently sick, and they displayed the same behavioral characteristics as their parents. Most of the second group actually died prematurely from diseases or various epidemics which swept through the rat population. Autopsies performed on this group of rats actually revealed extensive degeneration in all the organs, glands, and tissues of their bodies. Now the third group of rats was fed a diet identical to the second group until they reached the equivalent of about human years of about 40 years old. Now they displayed the same symptoms of ill health and self-destructive behavior as the second group. Now at the end of the 40-year equivalent, the rats were placed on a strict water fast for several days. Then they were fed the raw diet of the first group. This diet was alternated with periods of fasting. Within 1 month, their health and their behavior patterns changed dramatically. They became affectionate, playful, and never became sick. After the equivalent of about 80 human years, autopsies were performed, and these rats had actually reversed their degenerative tissue damage. So another person named Robert McCarrison first did experiments on rats, feeding one group raw food and the other cooked food. So the raw food rats actually lived very healthy lives, free of illness, and when autopsied, they showed very little signs of damage to their internal organs. The cooked food rats, on the other hand, developed tuberculosis, arthritis, ulcers, inflamed eyes, anemia, loss of hair, infected teeth, infected tonsils, and skin diseases of various types. In addition, the rats seemed to be affected mentally. So in contrast to the raw food rats, which were gentle and affectionate, these rats actually became ill-tempered and vicious. They would bite their keepers, kill each other, and generally be nervous and irritable. Now, Robert McCarrison also did experiments on monkeys. So he did the same experiment basically. So the raw food monkeys remained in good health with very few health issues. The cooked food monkeys, in the cooked food monkeys, diseases were very common, and every animal died within a maximum of 100 days. The average lifespan of cooked food monkeys was 60 days. Now, autopsies were performed on these monkeys, which showed dozens of abnormalities and ailments, including stomach ulcers, degeneration of the mucous membrane, ballooning of the bowels, atrophy and thinning of the walls of the small intestine, colitis, ballooning of the colon, and cancer. So starting in the 1930s, Dr. Edward Howell conducted 55 years of scientific research on humans on the subject of raw food and enzyme depletion that's caused by eating cooked food over a lifetime. Now, his studies revealed that enzymes are the catalyst for all biological processes and that life cannot exist without them. So he also discovered that while raw living foods are teeming with enzymes, that cooking completely destroys them due to their sensitivity to heat. Enzymes with any given food make the digestion of that food possible. So eating cooked food not only denatures the food, but also forces the body to steal metabolic enzymes in an attempt to digest the enzyme-depleted food. Dr. Howell was able to make a direct correlation between eating enzyme-depleted cooked food and the onset of chronic degenerative disease in humans. So Dr. Howell's conclusion is that many, if not all, degenerative diseases that humans suffer and die from are caused by the excessive use of enzyme-deficient cooked and processed foods. So when you eat cooked food, your body has to release copious amounts of enzymes in order to break down the food. Without enzymes, your food would never digest. So according to Dr. Edward Howell, your enzyme supply is limited and cooked food eventually runs it down to dangerously low levels. So cooking actually leaches minerals out of food. So nobody has studied the effect of minerals as extensively as Dr. Joel Wallach. He has performed 17,500 autopsies on 454 species and on 3,000 humans and has proved that they all died of some sort of mineral deficiency. He was nominated in 1991 for the Nobel Prize in Medicine. Cooking also destroys vitamins, which are needed to control the absorption and use of minerals. So whenever fat is cooked, trans fatty acids are produced. So trans fatty acids are one of the most destructive elements of any cooked food diet. They decrease testosterone and they interfere with pregnant animals. So they're a major source of damaging free radicals, and research has shown that chefs who spend time wok frying or pan frying have a higher incidence of lung cancer. So back in the 1920s, zookeepers actually who wanted to economize started feeding zoo animals with leftover cooked meat from restaurants, but this practice actually had to be abandoned because the zoo animals were getting sick and dying. So when you go to a zoo today, you'll see that carnivorous animals are actually fed their meat raw and uncooked. This is how they eat their food in the wild, and as such, they suffer from very few health problems, if any, when fed this way. So a lot of research into cooked food has shown that cooking actually destroys much of the vitamins and minerals in food, up to about 97% of the water-soluble vitamins and up to about 40% of the fat-soluble vitamins. Now, about 50% of B vitamins, vitamin B1 being as high as 96%, can be, and biotin up to about 72%, vitamin C up to about 80%. The Max Planck Institute for Nutritional Research in Germany has found that there is only 50% bioavailability in protein that has been cooked. So meaning only about 50% of this protein can be used by your body. Cooking alters protein into substances that disrupt cellular function, and they speed up the aging and disease process. Cooking also disrupts mineral absorption. Cooking also alters the chemistry of animal protein, making it difficult, if not impossible, for your body to use, and decreases the absorption of protein as well. So Paul Kuchikoff of Switzerland reported in 1930 that the white blood cell count goes up dramatically when eating cooked food, indicating its toxic effect on the body. However, the white blood cell count doesn't go up when consuming raw food. This is called digestive leukocytosis. So prior to the 1930s, scientists thought leukocytosis happens whenever any food is eaten. But Paul Kuchikoff was actually able to show that it only happens when cooked food is eaten, not raw food. So eating cooked food causes the white blood cell count in the food to go up, indicating that the human immune system is actually reacting to something that it feels may be hostile. but when raw food is eaten, this doesn't happen. So now, cooking disrupts RNA and DNA structures of foods and creates carcinogenic and mutagenic structures in fats. So studies have shown that cooking meat at high temperatures causes cancer-causing substances to be produced that have been shown to cause cancer in animals and cause damage to DNA. Now, very potent mutagens known as HAAs, which stands for heterocyclic aromatic amines, were produced in fish, beef, and poultry that had been cooked at high temperatures. In a study by the American National Cancer Institute led by Richard Adamson, Ph.D. Now, these very powerful mutagens can cause severe DNA damage and is one of the reasons that cancer patients should immediately become raw vegans or vegetarians if they ever wish to be cured of cancer. Barbecued meat is actually one of the worst health threats, as when burning fat drips onto an open flame, it actually causes PAHs, so polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, to be formed, which are dangerous carcinogens. In fact, many of the chemicals used to produce cancer in laboratory animals were actually isolated from cooked proteins. So even burned or charred bread crusts are supposed to contain a number of carcinogens. According to the Journal of the American National Cancer Institute for November 1998, eating barbecued or charred meat boosts the chances of both breast cancer and colon cancer. So cooking also produces a lot of free radicals as well, and so with a lot of free radicals and food enzymes destroyed, the natural defense systems of the body are compromised. The body utilizes enzymes to protect itself against free radicals by breaking down the free radicals into water and oxygen. So in conclusion, there's a mountain of evidence showing that eating your food cooked isn't optimal for good health, and that you should eat the majority, if not all, your food raw and uncooked to achieve good health. Now, obviously, this is a strange concept to most people, as cooking food is something we all take for granted. And I have to admit, the idea that cooked food is bad for your health was as alien to me as it probably is to you if you're hearing this for the first time. And you might feel that this idea is completely bizarre. But if you look at it logically and just be open-minded a little bit and think outside the box just a little, you'll realize that no other creature on planet Earth cooks its food. And this even goes for plants, insects, and bacteria. This is completely a human phenomenon. So rather than compare yourself to what other people are doing or what appears to be the norm in society, rather you should actually compare yourself to what actually happens in nature. So in nature, food is always eaten raw and uncooked, and wild animals rarely get sick or have as many health problems as humans do. So for the majority of human evolution, humans probably ate all their food raw. And then when that first caveman discovered fire, the idea of cooking food came around. Now, because of cooking, a lot of food, such as potatoes, rice, corn, wheat, etc., that was previously inedible now became edible because cooking softened it so they can now be eaten. Now, this is probably why cooking food is something universal, which we see across all cultures. And there's no country that I can think of where people don't cook their food. But this change probably happened tens of thousands of years ago. And as we have seen by the mountain of evidence that I gave in this video, that comes with a price to our health and our well-being. But keep in mind that there's no culture where people don't eat their food raw and uncooked as well. Of course, certain foods like fruit are always eaten raw and uncooked, and this seems to be universal across all cultures that I can think of as well. But it's really the raw food that keeps us healthy, and of course the cooked food which takes away from the health benefits that raw food provides. And this is why the human experience is both a mix of good health and disease. So this is in stark contrast to the animal kingdom, where in the wild, disease is actually quite rare. Diseases like diabetes and even the chronic coughs, colds, and flus, and bacterial and viral infections that humans get simply don't occur among wild animals that live in the forest or the jungle. However, when these same animals are domesticated and under the care of humans, these same diseases that are so common among humans show up in domesticated animals also. So the question then becomes, how do you start a raw food diet in a society that is generally unsupportive of such a diet? Well, the answer to that is to start small by simply slowly increasing the proportion of raw foods to cooked foods in your diet. There are actually a lot of raw food eaters out there now, and raw vegans and raw vegetarians, and the amount of people who eat like this is getting larger and larger day by day. Remember also that most people eat most of their food at home and not in restaurants. So the food that you eat in your own home is actually the most easiest to control. Restaurant food is much harder to control, but again, most restaurants do have salads. So you can just as easily order that instead of a cooked meal, or at least as the major part of your meal. So it can be done. I started by simply including at least one fresh raw fruit or vegetable with every meal, and I went from there. Now I slowly started increasing the proportion of raw food to cooked food in my diet, and now I'm up to 80 to 90% of my diet being in the form of fresh raw fruits and vegetables. I definitely do notice an improvement in my health as I now just generally blow my nose less, sleep better and more soundly, and go much longer and longer periods without catching any kind of cough, cold, flu, or bacterial or viral infection. I'm not as worried about germs and pathogens that cause illness as I once was, as my immune system seems to be able to handle them without any issues. And I just generally, for the most part, feel good most of the time. Anyway, I realize this is a lot to think about, and I'm going to list some of the experiments that have been done showing the difference in health outcomes between cooked food and raw food at the end that I wasn't able to get to during this video. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please click like, click subscribe as well, and ring the notification bell, and do that for all my videos. Bye for now.